Hey guys, how's it going? So this week, from Sunday, October 13th until Saturday, October 19th, is OCD Awareness Week. I have OCD, and it's something that I think mental illness in general a lot of times is misunderstood, and there's a lot of misinformation and obviously stigma out there, but OCD, I think specifically, is very, very misunderstood. So I'm going to be making a series of videos this week talking about OCD and a couple different topics within that category. I'm going to be leaving the schedule, I suppose, linked down below because some of these I'm filming ahead of time and I haven't quite made up my mind, so it'll all be linked down below for you. Today's video, to kick things off, is going to be a bit about OCD. Basically, what OCD is and isn't. I'm going to be giving you guys some quick is and isn't, and then I'm going to talk about things. But the very first thing I want to say is that OCD is different for everybody. It is not one size fits all. There are many different kinds of OCD, and just like with almost everything in life, everybody's personal experiences with this are going to be slightly different. Obviously, there's specific criteria for obsessive compulsive disorder, but everybody, it's in your brain, right? Our brains all work differently. So there are so many different types of OCD. I am going to be talking about my own personal experience, plus things from all of the research I've done and what I've learned through therapy. I'm not actually a professional, but I know some stuff, and I would like to share some of that stuff with you guys. OCD is a mental illness. It is not being quirky. This bothers me so much because, first of all, the romanticizing or glorification of any kind of mental illness, I think, is very damaging. There's a difference between accepting a mental illness and glorifying it, and I think some people cross that line, but specifically with OCD, sometimes people make it out to be this like funny, cute, quirky personality trait, and it's not. It is a mental illness. It is sometimes a debilitating mental illness. It's not just somebody being weird or little quirks like that. It's something wrong with their brains that we cannot control. So yes, that's the first thing I want to get out of the way. Next, OCD is an anxiety disorder. It is not a psychotic disorder. This is something that honestly I didn't know for a long time, because how OCD works is your brain just comes up with rules for you that you have to follow or else. And a lot of times, for a lot of people, there's reasoning to those rules, and I'll be the first one to admit they don't make sense. In the next video, I'm going to be talking about my own personal experience with OCD, and I'm going to go into some of my own specific obsessions and compulsions and go into all of that. But as an example, if I eat any sort of colored candy like M&Ms in the wrong order, my family will die. And that doesn't make any sense. I am a smart and logical person, and I am fully aware that the order that I eat random candies in has no correlation with my family's health. However, that being said, it is a solid fact in my brain that if I do it wrong, my family will die. And I understand that that sounds, like a psychotic disorder, because it sounds like it means that I don't have a firm grip on reality, that I'm quote-unquote crazy. But it's not a psychotic disorder. It's not people truly believing that the world... I don't really know how to explain it, but basically it's that it's a type of anxiety disorder that for some reason your brain just gets really freaked out about things and decides, hey, if I do this thing, I don't have to be scared of this thing. It doesn't make sense. I know that. I am very aware of that, but it doesn't matter. But basically, OCD is your brain's weird way of coping with ridiculous amounts of anxiety and just doing it in a very abnormal way. But it is still, at its root, an anxiety disorder. Next, OCD is intrusive thoughts. OCD is not just intrusive thoughts. So a big component of OCD is intrusive thoughts, which, if you don't know, is basically thoughts that pop into your head that don't feel like they come from you. Thoughts that you can't control, which everybody has. And that's something that I think is also very misunderstood about OCD. A lot of the symptoms everybody has, but it's the degree at which you have those that makes it obsessive compulsive disorder. The best way that I can explain it is it's like being sad and having depression. As far as mental illnesses go, depression is talked about more than many others, so it's a little bit more understood. But if it wasn't, if you just explained to somebody, oh, depression is when you can't feel happiness anymore, and if they had no other context, they might think, oh, wait, I was sad last week for no reason. I have depression. We know that that's not what depression is, but it's that kind of logic that gets applied to OCD a lot. So OCD is a lot of, like I said, intrusive thoughts. But everybody has intrusive thoughts. It's the level, the severity, and the meaning that we place on those intrusive thoughts. Next, OCD is treatable. OCD is not curable. The same goes for a lot of mental illnesses. You don't get cured of it, you just improve to the point that it doesn't really affect your day-to-day life on a large scale. OCD specifically, it won't go away. You can learn to be aware of which thoughts are yours and which thoughts are your OCD's, and you can work on lessening the feelings, and you can work on not performing your rituals and your compulsions, and there's things you can definitely do to be able to live your life with it. But if you have OCD, you will always have OCD. There isn't even medication for OCD. I have medication that I have to take every day for it, but there isn't OCD medication, and there's actually no medication, at least in Canada and I believe in the US, that is specifically approved for treating OCD and to be able to legally claim that they treat OCD. The medication, for the most part, that you take for OCD is anxiety medication, because since OCD is an anxiety disorder, it, for the most part, helps lessen the anxiety enough that you can logically react on your own, if that makes any sense. So when you're having something that would set off one of your OCD rituals, there's no medication that will make your brain not want to do that. But there's things you can practice, things you can do, tricks you learn in therapy, and with the anxiety medication, it'll help, calm you down enough that you can do those things. But that's another thing that kind of bothers me. You will never not have OCD. I will never not have OCD. And that's okay, but I am always going to be coming up with new compulsions and rituals, and that's just how my brain works. And that's okay, but it's just something you have to be aware of. And finally, OCD is really fucking difficult and valid. OCD is not a joke or a meme. I have noticed this has gotten better in the last couple of years, but it is so annoying and honestly discouraging when I see people sharing funny jokes or memes of like a series of squares that are slightly off balance, and it's oh, people with OCD would get so mad about this, because first of all, having something trigger your OCD is not fun or funny. It is difficult and terrifying and painful sometimes. It's not a funny thing. And also, for the most part, that's not even what OCD is. It's one of those things that no matter what, it's harmful. Either that would bother people with OCD, in that case you're just being a giant jackass, or it's nothing to do with OCD and you're just spreading misinformation. I know people say things like, oh, well, it's just a joke, it's harmless, but it's not. It's spreading this incorrect information and this stigma about OCD. Honestly, I didn't realize I even had OCD for the longest time, and I actually argued against one of my doctors when he kind of hinted that he thought I had it, because I thought that I knew what OCD was because of all of this misinformation that was out there. And maybe if I hadn't have had all of that experience, and maybe if I would have had more information, I could have got help sooner. And it's just one of those things that is just really harmful, and for the most part it has gotten better, I will admit that. But it's one of those things that I still see around all the time, and it still really bothers me. So next time you want to make a joke about OCD, just please don't, just don't. So those were just some quick facts about what OCD is and isn't. Now I'm going to kind of explain some things and just talk about OCD so that I can kind of expand on those points and really explain properly. So basically how OCD works is that you have these Intrusive thoughts or obsessions, they're usually both, but they can be one or the other. And essentially, something pops into your head, your brain obsesses over it, your brain gets anxiety, and then your brain decides that you have to do something, which is the compulsion or the ritual, to get rid of that anxiety. And then it loops. Now, not every obsession has a compulsion and vice versa, but usually one causes the other. But there's some that don't necessarily have an obvious correlation. It's just sometimes things just will loop forever, and sometimes you just have to do this thing for no apparent reason. Like I said, this is something that so many people experience. Like, people get minor obsessions all of the time, and people get intrusive thoughts quite often. Like, it's a very normal thing, and sometimes a thought will pop into your head and you don't know where it came from. Like, sometimes you're just, walking down the street and suddenly a thought just pops in your head out of nowhere saying, I wonder what happened if I jump in front of that car. A lot of people, that happens, you ignore it, and it goes away, you forget about it. For people with OCD, your brain gets scared of where that thought comes from and why you need to do that, and it obsesses over it, essentially. And it just assigns extra meaning to it than you usually would. But the thing to understand is OCD, like I've said, is a lot of very common symptoms just amplified. So if you have the occasional intrusive thought, that does not mean you have OCD. If you have certain compulsions or rituals that you do to make yourself feel better, that doesn't necessarily mean it's OCD. There's a difference between a ritual and a routine. If you don't do this thing, does it cause you extreme anxiety and distress? Let's just say, for example, you really like eating the green Skittles last because they're your favorite flavor. That's a habit. That's a preference. That's not OCD. But if you can't eat it any other way without having a panic attack, freaking out, having all of these terrible feelings and all these terrible thoughts, at that point, it may be OCD. Another example is having your books in alphabetical order. I like having my books in alphabetical order, but that's not because I have OCD. That's because I'm a Ravenclaw. I like it that way because it's convenient and it's organized and it's helpful. If I have them slightly out of order, it will bother me, but it won't cause me the extreme distress and anxiety. It's a preference, it's a habit, it's not OCD. I think that's the thing that I really wish people would understand, is that OCD is a real and valid and difficult mental illness, but not everything that seems neat and organized and routine is OCD. There's a very fine line between the two. I really like washing my hands. I like having clean hands. But that's not one of my OCD rituals, because if I don't wash my hands, I'm gonna feel kind of gross, but I'll be able to move on with my day. If it was an OCD ritual, like someone that has cleanliness-based OCD, if they don't wash their hands, depending on the severity, but they may not be able to concentrate on anything else all day until they wash their hands again, and they feel like they have to wash their hands. OCD is not a choice, it is not funny, it is not cute or quirky, it is terrible, and it's real. So, on that pleasant note, that will be all for today's video. If you have any specific questions about OCD, I'm thinking for my last video to maybe do some sort of Q&A or something, so definitely let me know down below if there's any specific questions you have, and if I don't get enough questions and I don't end up doing a Q&A, I'll still answer your question in the comments. But that is all for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please click the like button if you did to let me know, and if you want to see the rest of my OCD related videos, and of course my regular videos that I post every Wednesday and Sunday that are usually reading, writing, or cat related, click the subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all of that. But I hope to see you guys next time, and until then, have a great day. Bye!